Hey everyone, this is Rob Adams from the Actors Workshop, and once again, you're in the abyss. It is the Bicentennial year, 1976, and I'm going to do it a little different today because I got a lot of films to go through to show you guys to check out. So I'm going to go with my number one and then work backwards today. So at number one is the legendary Rocky. I love this movie, very similar in the way that I love Jaws. And that is, it's not really in Jaws about the shark, like we said yesterday. In Rocky, it's really not about the boxing. It's about the person and his trying to survive, him trying to make a buck, working for a loan shark, and on the side doing his boxing, and then trying to impress the girl who works at the pet store. And when he originally gets offered to fight Apollo Creed, he says no. And the reason is because he knows he's not as good of a boxer as anybody who would even contend with Apollo Creed. But eventually he decides to do it, and it's an opportunity of a lifetime. He gets to fight in Philadelphia, where he lived, and it was filmed in Philadelphia, of course, on the streets of Philadelphia. And on January 1st, 1976, he gets his opportunity against Apollo Creed, the heavyweight champion of the world, played by Carl Weathers, who is phenomenal. And it's funny, as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate Apollo Creed a lot more. And the more that I watch this movie now, I really, really, really love what Carl Weathers did with Apollo Creed. It's phenomenal. A quick tidbit: I went to Philadelphia many years ago, and I'm a big history buff, and you go visit the Liberty Bell or Independence Hall, and there's some people out there checking it out. But when you go over to the art museum where the Rocky statue is, there's a lot more people at the Rocky statue than there is at Independence Hall or at the Liberty Bell. It's crazy. But that's how good Sylvester Stallone was as Rocky. People believe him as a real person. You could go on something on Facebook or something, top boxers of all time. Some yahoo's going to write Rocky Balboa. It's unbelievable. That's how good Stallone was. He was Rocky Balboa. He still is Rocky Balboa. And that's an iconic role. And that's great acting where the audience believes what they're watching is real. And very similar to the story we told about The Godfather with Pacino and Paramount, where, they were pushing back that he didn't look like a star and stuff like that. It was very similar with Stallone. Stallone had written it. He was going to direct it and was going to act in it. And then the studio was like, well, we should maybe have a star doing this. How about a Ryan O'Neal? And Stallone's like, no, my film, I'm Rocky. And it actually works out better that he wasn't a star at the time. It was the movie that made him a star, because there's a humanistic side to Rocky when you watch this film. Talia Shire as Adrian, phenomenal. Burt Young as Paulie, the friend who feels cheated all the time. He's just perfect. It's well done, well shot, well acted all the way through. My number one for sure in 76 is Rocky. A close number two, the legendary Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro. Martin Scorsese, of course, directed it. You got Peter Boyle. You have Sybil Shepherd. And, of course, a 15-year-old Jodie Foster. And her work with De Niro is amazing. It is, of course, a legendary film. Famous lines. You talking to me? You talking to me? That is... I'm speechless. It's just such a really, really good movie. And it was hard to pick between Rocky and this, but Rocky is a little bit more uplifting than Taxi Driver. So I kind of lean toward Rocky for this. But Taxi Driver is a can't miss, especially if you've never seen it. Some others I'd like to talk about: Silver Streak, Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor, Jill Clayburgh. They're great. The chemistry is phenomenal. The story's phenomenal. It's funny as hell and has such a great flow. And it's probably a reason why we saw Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor pitted together in several other films, because they just had that chemistry. And I think when we watch today's acting, we don't really get to see the natural ability of actors consistently as we did back in the 70s. 70s just had so many different great actors and actresses, and the combination of how they worked together was second to none. And this one stands the test of time. It's still as funny today as it was all those years before in 1976. So Silver Streak is a must. One of my favorite sports movies of all time, Bad News Bears. Walter Matthau at his finest. Tatum O'Neal, who of course won at the age of 9 the Academy Award for Best Actress, the youngest to ever do that for Paper Moon. She's at her heyday, and you know, you watch her and she's just so natural. She's so good, and the way she banters with Walter Matthau is great. You have Jackie Earle Haley, who of course has had a phenomenal career as Kelly Leak, and then all those kids. And it's kind of cool when you listen to the stories of how they allow these kids to just be kids and kind of go off the cuff. They had guidelines, but they could just do their thing. And you see just such a natural feel between the kids, but also their banter with Buttermaker, Walter Matthau. And it just makes this film really strong. You see the remake with Billy Bob Thornton, and Billy Bob is such a good actor, but it's hard to, do a remake of such an iconic film without all of the things that played together to make this iconic. And that's why this movie stands the test of time, and that's why they probably shouldn't try to remake these types of movies. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Vic Morrow, who of course plays the rival coach with Buttermaker, Coach Turner. He, of course, been in film a long time, way back 1958 with Elvis and King Creole, which also stars Walter Matthau. And then, he did stuff like Target Harry and things like that. And of course, unfortunately, he was killed on the set of making Twilight Zone, the movie. But I wanted to mention him because he was such a terrific actor as well. Like I said, one of my favorite sports movies, Bad News Bears. In other movies I've talked about, Brian De Palma is one of my favorite directors. This is one of his best. Carrie, a lot of you guys have seen it, but it's just really well done. A young John Travolta, a young William Catt. Nancy Allen, who's one of my favorites, who was used a lot in De Palma films, Dressed to Kill, Blowout, etc. So it's a really good one. I wanted to mention that. And then a couple others just to mention that Dustin Hoffman did, Marathon Man, and then of course with Robert Redford, All the President's Men. So there's some movies to check out for 1976. On the music side, I narrowed it down to 2, but since yesterday I kind of changed my way with Rush. I'm going to start with this one, which is the Eagles' Hotel California. It's a classic. The Eagles, of course, had put out so many great songs and so much great music up to this point, but I think this one is the ultimate album for them. Every song is great. You have the hits, Hotel California, New Kid in Town, Life in the Fast Lane, but then you have some amazing songs like Wasted Time, Victim of Love, The Last Resort, Try and Love Again, Pretty Maids All in a Row. I mean, it just is so strong and solid. And you got Joe Walsh singing on one song, and you got Glenn Frey on several songs, you got Don Henley on several songs, and you put all that together, and it just came to a head of Hotel California being their perfect overall album, in my opinion. In any other year, this probably is going to be a number 1, but because of my love for Rush and what this album meant to, them and to us as Rush fans, 2112 by Rush is going to be my number 1 for 76. This was the album that sent them to a different level as musicians and as a group. Quick story behind this album. We talked yesterday about Fly By Night, which came out in early 75. In late 75, they released another album, their third, Caress of Steel. And beyond Rush fans, it didn't do that great. And so the record company told them, you're on your last album of a 4-record deal. We need something with shorter songs, more radio friendly, more pep, etc. And there's a documentary about this where they talk about this, but they kind of got together and they kind of decided, do we want to compromise our artistic self for a record deal, or do we want to do our thing, our vision, and then figure it out from there? And they did the latter. They decided to, I'd rather go work at the shop or go work for Dad or whatever it was, and then to, just do what the record company wants us to do. So they came up with the record 2112. And 2112 is basically side one of the record. And it's the story of the year 2112, and all these gifts of life are now hidden in the temples of Syrinx by these high priests. And the peasants of the world don't really know these things exist. And anyways, guy finds a guitar and starts to realize, hey, there's beauties in life that we don't know about. And anyways, and it goes into this whole 7-part story. And so it's 7 songs in the in the parts to give you the full story. And that kind of gives you the 2112 story on side A, side 1, whatever. And then on the second side, where 5 radio friendly hits, and there's some really good ones on here. Something for Nothing, A Passage to Bangkok, which is really awesome. Tears, Lessons. It's The Twilight Zone, which is another great one. But 2112 ended up sending them to a different level, and of course they signed a longer record deal with Mercury Records, and they became who and what they are. And 2112 is one of the top records of all time. And so as much as I do love the Eagles Hotel California, it's never going to beat out 2112. I love this album. So check this out if you haven't listened to it. It's pretty amazing. And then of course for the film, Yo Adrian, it's me, Rocky, 1976. We'll see you tomorrow.